Welcome, faithful listeners, to Episode 3 of The Marlboro Story, How a Hardy Little Peninsula Looked After Itself, brought to you by Lemoyne Radio Theater. Our story tells the dramatic tale of Marlboro's discontent with its original home, the town of Hancock, and its search for a new home during the 1920s. We last left the Marlboroites seeking permission from the Maine legislature to leave the neglectful confines of Hancock to join the more welcoming town of Lemoyne. It is now April 1930. Marlboro is pursuing legislation for the third time to separate from Hancock. An attempt in 1929 was thwarted by ballot box skullduggery planned and carried out by Hancock officials. A court hearing in February had concluded that there was no foul play, but many residents of Marlboro remained convinced that justice was not done. And now, back to our story.
It's a warm April morning, the kind of spring day that turns the roads to soup. Lemoyne Selectman Dewey Smith enters Elwood M. King's General Store, located across from the Grange Hall at Lemoyne Corner, where he encounters Sherman Douglas. Though no longer a state senator, Douglas is once again a selectman in Lemoyne and continues to lead the effort to annex Marlboro.
Say, Sherm, did you see this letter in the American? Seems as though folks over in Hancock are getting tired of what they're now calling the Battle of Marlboro.
No, I haven't, Dewey. Who's it from?
Just says a neutral citizen of Hancock. He says even though the judge there ruled that the special election last summer was legal, the Marlboro election that kept Marlboro in Hancock, even though the judge said it was legal, people over there think it was rigged.
Well, I don't blame them. I can't see where selling a postage stamp of land to someone just so they can vote in that election was fair and square.
That's just what this here neutral citizen says. And I quote, "No one is foolish enough to think that, with so much at stake, Marlboro will not try to separate again. Would it not be well to let them go as they are sure to in the end?"
Rest assured, Dewey, I'm talking to some of the new legislators about presenting a new bill of separation in the 1931 session.
Thanks be for that. We'll need your connections over to Augusta, Sherm. With all the businesses you do with folks in Marlboro, I imagine that you and Lyle Brown and that crew can keep the boiler stoked on this right through the summer.
That's for damn sure.
That summer of 1930 did indeed stoke the fires for separation. Lyle L. Brown, owner of several summer rentals, continued to serve as ringleader of the effort. Come October, Brown and Douglas called a meeting to design a new separation bill. With Douglas out of the legislature, they approached newly elected Representative Ray Graves from Mount Desert to sponsor the bill. On a brisk day in mid-October, Representative Graves and his wife arrive at Lemoyne Beach on the steamboat ferry from Hull's Cove to confer with Douglas and Brown at Douglas's store.
Well, here he is now. Welcome, Ray. Congratulations on your election to the House. We're mighty pleased to have you. How was your trip over?
Just dandy. Wind pretty brisk from the northwest, but plenty room on the boat for me and the missus. Hello, Lyle. Good to see you again.
And regards to you and Mrs. Graves. We appreciate your coming to Lemoyne to discuss the Marlboro bill.
I'm pleased to do it. I'm hearing from some of the small neighborhoods in other towns that their roads and schools are being neglected too. They're saying they're not getting the things they're paying their taxes for.
Now, Ray, as I said when I called you the other day, we're hoping you'll introduce the bill to the legislature next session. I realize you've just been elected and tempers are flaring.
I'm good with that. I'll be happy to do it, so long as I've got some help.
We gotta make a couple of things absolutely clear. First, once the legislature passes the bill, there will be no local vote in either town or in Marlboro to ratify the legislature's decision. That's where the last bill ran into difficulty and, frankly, allowed Foss, Johnson, and that crew to kill the separation. Second, we need to let the legislature know that we're at war here, that people are at each other's throats over this.
I've drafted an emergency preamble, Lyle, that should take care of that. It says this needs to be settled by April 1 when the tax bills are sent out, so the town that's willing to fix the roads and school, which of course would be Lemoyne, can get right to it. I wrote it, so it says, and I quote, "Passage of this bill is immediately necessary for the preservation of public peace, health, and safety."
You hit the nail right on the head there, Sherm.
Yes, and we'll need to make the case very clear so the Committee on Towns can give it an ought-to-pass recommendation to the whole legislature. Most members aren't from this part of Maine. I'm worried they may not see the importance of it.
On the other hand, most of them know about the big kerfuffle last season. They've heard directly from Foss and Company, and now we need to educate them about that conniving scheme with the vote last August. Lyle, I imagine you can help with that.
Absolutely. And I know others in Marlboro and Hancock that will stand up for what's right. We're willing to travel all the way to Augusta to make our case.
Over the next month, with the help of Sherm Douglas, Representative Graves submitted a bill that would move Marlboro to Lemoyne by, quote, reestablishing the boundary between Hancock and Lemoyne. By late January of 1931, legislative committees are reviewing proposed bills, deciding whether to recommend passage or not to the whole legislature. Representative Graves is in Augusta on January 18 when he receives a phone call from Sherm Douglas back home in Lemoyne.
Hello, operator. Could you clear the line to Representative Graves at Augusta 26557?
Hello? Hello?
This is your operator. Am I speaking to a Mr. Ray Graves?
You sure are.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Douglas.
Hello, Ray. How are you settling in over there?
Oh, I'm doing just fine, thank you, Sherm. I appreciate the introductions you gave me to so many members, and I've been talking up my Marlboro bill.
Right, that's why I called. You'll be presenting the Marlboro bill to the Committee on Towns a couple of days from now, I see. How do you figure the votes line up on it?
I'm not at all sure, Sherm. There's only 3 committee members from east of the Kennebec. I'm wondering if others will sympathize with little old Marlboro. And I'm worried that they're going to want Lemoyne to pay Hancock something for the annexation.
Yes, I hear that Foss and that crew have been visiting both House and Senate members.
I'm worried that the committee will recommend that the bill ought not to pass. I think you and I should talk with representatives from Hancock County to make sure they'll speak up on the floor of the House. I can talk with Norm Shaw over from Bar Harbor. Do you see Carol Blaisdell from Franklin much?
Solid idea, Ray. I'll talk to Blaisdell for sure. And I can place a call to Senator Weymouth up in Bangor. I'm afraid I can't do much on account I'm laid up. But Lyle Brown has organized a lot of folks in Marlboro, and some in Hancock, to write letters.
You still got plenty of clout around here, Sherm. I'll give you a call the day after tomorrow and let you know how the committee hearing went.
Thank you, Ray. I'll await your call.
Over the following months, Representative Graves's bill came before the Committee on Towns several times. With each hearing, committee members raised questions. What right did the citizens of Marlboro have to secede from Hancock, taking their valuable properties with them? Why doesn't this bill include a payment from Lemoyne to Hancock? By late February, newspapers were reporting regularly on the bill. The Battle of Marlboro was big news. And that, of course, set the phone lines in Marlboro abuzz, including Mrs. Hattie Ford's. On a cold February morning, Hattie cranks her phone to summon the phone operator to share the latest news.
Hello? Oh, good morning, Hattie.
Yes, hello, Margaret. And how are you doing this chilly February day?
I'm doing just fine, thank you, Hattie. So long as I'm sitting here next to the stove. Who can I connect you with, dear?
Clara McIntyre, if you please.
Surely. Hold on.
Hello. I've not had a telephone call in 2 weeks. Who's calling?
I have a call for you from Hattie Ford, Mrs. McIntyre.
Why, thank you, Margaret. Hello, Hattie. What a surprise.
Yes, indeed, Clara. Thought I'd give you a call to let you in on the latest news about our bill over to Augusta. The committee voted against it.
What? Voted against it? So the whole legislature isn't even going to vote on it? Lordy, what will they come up with next?
Here, Clara, let me read from this week's American. Says right here that the battling legions of Hancock and Lemoyne had their innings before the Legislative Committee on Towns last Wednesday at Augusta. There was considerable feeling, some oratorical fireworks, but no casualties. The committee yesterday submitted a divided report, 8-2, recommending the bill ought not to pass. Only 2 members think it should pass.
Gracious sakes, Hattie, what are we to do now?
Over the next few weeks, advocates on both sides of the so-called Hancock-Marlboro controversy pressured the legislators. The Ellsworth American kept local readers abreast of the debate, taking some pleasure in revealing the details of last year's skullduggery and lawsuit. Then, in mid-March, the fate of the separation bill took a sudden and unexpected turn for the better, prompting Hattie Ford to immediately put in another call to Clara McIntyre.
Hello, Clara. Have you read the Bangor Daily News today?
Why, no, Hattie. You know we never get the paper down here till at least a day after you.
You won't believe this. It's great news. The House of Representatives seem to have some common sense after all. They voted to let us leave Hancock. Here, let me read it to you. The House today turned down the ought not to pass report of the Committee on Towns and voted to transfer the neighborhood known as Marlboro from the town of Hancock to the town of Lemoyne after spirited debate in which it was charged that methods used by selectmen of Hancock in defeating the referendum last August were crooked and underhanded and as dirty as conceivable. Representative Blaisdell of Franklin, after describing the fight in the legislature 2 years ago over the Marlboro proposal, said, "I don't dare trust a referendum to those people because those same Hancock selectmen are in office. Hancock is a harsh and unsympathetic stepfather to Marlboro," he said. So there, Clara. What do you think of that? They sure got that right.
It's just what you said, Hattie. Those fellows in Augusta do have a trace of good sense after all. So, what happens next? Does this mean we can be rid of that old Hancock bunch?
Oh, no, Clara, not yet. Now the Senate has got to look it all over. They've got to vote for it, too, before we can begin to smell the clover.
Well, just the same, I'll tell everybody down the point here. We got something to celebrate.
News of the House vote spread fast through Hancock and Lemoyne. While many on the west side of the river celebrated, the news only stoked the anger of some on the east side. At Hancock's town meeting a few days later, Ivory Foss and his followers found an opportunity to punish Marlboro when the article to fund road repairs came up.
Yes, Ivory Frost. What is it now?
We've had enough from those upstarts in Marlboro. We don't know, come April 1, if they're still going to be part of Hancock or not. So why should we lay by these funds for their roads? If the Senate votes for separation, Lemoyne should pay for the roads.
Yeah, you said it, Ivory.
Now hold on. Fair is fair. Marlboro is still part of our town. They've paid taxes to us. We owe it to them to appropriate these funds to repair their roads.
I don't see it that way, Walter. If they desert Hancock, they need to pay for their own improvements. Or rather, Lemoyne should pay.
Agreed.
Come on, let's settle it.
Now, settle down, settle down.
How many of you have been over to Marlboro to ride on their roads? They're nearly impassable. We're still going to send out tax bills to Marlboro for next year, so we're obliged to budget for their roads.
I move we postpone this article indefinitely.
I second it.
Selectman Foss has moved to indefinitely postpone raising funds for Marlboro's roads. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
This article is passed. No funds for Marlboro roads this year.
Over the next week, Marlboro, Lemoyne, and Hancock citizens followed the news out of Augusta, waiting on the Senate to consider the bill. It's March 19, and Representative Graves has once again raised Sherm Douglas by phone with an update.
Yes, Sherm. As I was saying, we've got some good support in the Senate. Those telephone calls you put in sure paid off.
So what are they saying about Lemoyne paying something to Hancock?
They put in an amendment on that. Let me see here. I've got it right here. It says Lemoyne would have to, and I quote, provide for the payment of $100 annually for 12 years as Marlboro's proportional part of the Hancock-Sullivan Bridge bond paid by Hancock 2 years earlier.
$100 a year for 12 years. That's not going to break the bank here, Ray. And besides, we're going to take in taxes from Marlboro and see a boost to our businesses here in Lemoyne. Our Board of Selectmen will support that.
That's awfully good to hear, Sherm. The vote should be coming up in the next few days. I'll ring you up as soon as the Senate has decided.
We sure are obliged to you, Ray. You tell Senator Weymouth I owe him one.
Within days, the Senate approved the amendment and sent the amended bill back to the House, where it was summarily approved on March 26, 1931. It was signed into law by Governor Owen Brewster on April 3. By noontime the next day, the Bangor Daily News had arrived on the Marlboro doorstep of Mr. and Mrs. Oscar W. Ford. Hattie Ford, of course, had heard the news by telephone, but seeing it in print sent her into a flurry of activity. Throwing on her coat and boots, she walked the half-mile to Clara's home. Bursting into Clara's kitchen, waving the paper, she hollered,
Hallelujah, Clara! We've done it! Just like I said on the phone yesterday, we've won our independence from those brutes across the river. Here it is in black and white.
Aye, Hattie, this calls for a celebration.
Here, let me read it to you. The long-awaited act to reestablish the boundary between the towns of Hancock and Lemoyne passed overwhelmingly in both the main House and Senate. The Battle of Hancock is over. Marlboro will, in 3 months' time, be annexed to Lemoyne, and the good citizens of that community will look forward to better roads and peace on their peninsula.
Think of it, Hattie. The battle is over. There were times I was sure we'd be the orphan of Hancock forever. But we showed 'em, just like we've always said, we may be small, and we may be at the end of the road, but we've got gumption and we know what's right.
Well said, Clara. Now let's walk on down the road and share this news with everyone.
And so the persistence of this hardy little peninsula paid off. The Hancock forces kept to their side of the river, and the town of Lemoyne opened its arms to welcome Marlboro. The following February of 1932, the Bangor Daily ran the headline, Marlboro getting along finely. Mother Lemoyne is making new daughter comfortable and happy. Here's Hattie Ford reading about road improvements from that article.
A prominent citizen from Marlboro points out that without a cent of appropriation from its 1931 taxes, which were collected by Hancock, that a real highway program has been satisfied. The Booster Club of Lemoyne were the real hustlers in that movement. The roads have been smoothed and graveled, Bushes have been cut over practically the entire mileage, and snow removed promptly when it became necessary.
Since the conclusion to the Battle of Marlborough, the story has been passed down as family lore and as a full-blown epic poem written by Evans Crabtree that starts with these lines. To a quiet little village on the shores of Frenchman's Bay came a man whose name was Brown to pass the time away. We've met that man whose name was Brown. His first name was Lyle. After the annexation, he served as a selectman in Lemoyne and a major force in joining the two communities together. Around 50 years after that joining, his son David put pen to paper to summarize the Battle of Marlborough and how it ended. Here, Lyle's granddaughter and current resident of Marlborough, Carol Mason, reads her Uncle David's conclusion to this colorful episode in our town's history.
The governor's signature on the law, however, was not quite the end of the story. Old and deep-seated animosities die slowly, even in Maine. Marlborough was a tiny community, but there were those of us who did not speak to each other for months, perhaps years. Although Mother's family still lived in Hancock, we did not feel really comfortable there for some time to come, and bought our fish and lobsters elsewhere. Marlborough can still be found on most of the maps, should you ever want to go there, and the view of Cadillac Mountain is as lovely as ever. It is 9 miles from Ellsworth over asphalt roads, and, as if to make it clear that integration has really taken place, the first selectman of Lemoyne for many years claimed Marlborough as his residence. The raccoons visit the garbage pails regularly, as they always did, and the seagulls keep watch over the tidelands just as before. But Marlborough is now legally Lemoyne.
We trust you've enjoyed the stirring story of Marlborough's journey across the Skillings River. We trust as well that you have come to admire the persistence of the hardy residents of the Marlborough Peninsula and Lemoyne's far-sightedness in welcoming the neighborhood to our town. Readers for Episode 3 of the Marlboro Story were Don Bamman as Lemoyne Selectman Dewey Smith, Fred Stocking as Selectman J. Sherman Douglas, Merle Bragdon as Lyle L. Brown, Steve Gable Richards as Representative Ray Graves, Carol Duffy as the telephone operator, Tom St. Clair as the Hancock Town Meeting moderator, Brent Hutchins as Hancock Selectman Ivory Foss, Don Bamman as Hancock Selectman Walter C. Moon, Sharon St. Clair as Mrs. Hattie Ford, Ann Stocking as Mrs. Clara McIntyre, Carol Mason as herself. The narrator for this final episode has been Gordon Donaldson, and I, Robin Vasey, have been honored to serve as your host for all 3 episodes of the Marlboro Story. This drama was written by Gordon Donaldson and Fred Stocking and produced by Lemoyne Radio Theater, a collaboration of Lemoyne 150, Lemoyne Community Arts, and the Lemoyne Technology Committee. Our production benefited greatly from the technical assistance of Bill Butler, Stu Marcoon, and Carol Mason. Keep an eye out for future Lemoyne Radio Theater productions. They will be announced on the Town of Lemoyne website, lemoyne-maine.gov, and Lemoyne 150's Facebook page.